How often do you find yourself saying, "Oh, it happened again"? Someone shows up with their intense emotions or domineering aura, and your energy field and boundary collapse. You suddenly find yourself totally off your center, and your entire system is either colonized or engulfed by someone else's powerful signal. Your energy field doesn't just shift, it evacuates. You lose your anchor, your authority, your own frame of reality. You're not normally like this, so why do these people trigger you into a smaller, less evolved, less sovereign version of yourself? This is Amara Strand. Welcome to the podcast. Today we're talking about why you can't hold your own space around other people's intensity. This isn't just you being weak or a pushover. It's that you haven't yet learned to hold your authority, your reality frame, in the presence of strong external pressure. You get triggered, your energetic boundaries collapse, and you get displaced in your own energy field. You know the feeling. Someone walks into the room with their big, intense energy, and something inside you locks into it. Your center of gravity moves. Your energetic boundary turns to jello. The ground beneath your internal world tilts. Maybe it's your boss in a rage about the quarterly numbers. Maybe it's the friend who speaks about politics, relationships, or life choices with such unshakable conviction that your own perspective starts to feel like a rough draft. Maybe it's your partner who's already decided how the evening will go, how you'll spend the money, what you actually meant when you said what you said, and disagreeing with them, holding your own reality frame, would require a level of personal power you don't have access to in the moment. Whoever it is, their intensity doesn't just influence your energy, it reorganizes it. You can feel yourself getting smaller, less substantial, more tenuous. Your energetic boundary collapses, and your own thoughts, feelings, and knowing start to feel less solid, less accessible, and less relevant. And here's the strange part. Being self-aware about this doesn't necessarily help you. You know what I mean. We've all experienced that feeling of watching ourselves switch into a smaller, less evolved version of ourselves, and yet we can't snap ourselves out of it. You're aware that something's off, that you've been displaced in your own body, pushed to the periphery of your own experience, but awareness doesn't stop it. You're still there, in that collapsed state, feeling like you're operating from behind a pane of glass, slightly removed from yourself, but unable to break back through. And as I said, this isn't about being weak. It's not about lacking confidence or needing to be more assertive. What's actually happening is far more mechanical, more structural than that. Your energy field is collapsing around certain people in certain situations. Let's take a look at why this happens and what's really going on. There are 3 distinct flavors of intensity that trigger this collapse. Each one has its own signature, its own way of displacing you from your center. The first is emotional intensity. Picture this. Your partner comes home and they're upset, not just annoyed, but truly activated. Frustration is radiating off them in waves. Before they've even finished explaining what happened, you can feel your internal space emptying out. It's like your energetic field instinctively creates a vacancy for their urgency and high intensity to fill. Their anger, their anxiety, their emotional charge, it rushes in and takes over the space where you were just standing. You're still physically present, but energetically, you've evacuated to the margins of your own experience. Or maybe it's a colleague who's panicking about a deadline, and suddenly their panic becomes the dominant signal in your nervous system. You weren't anxious about the deadline 5 minutes ago, but now you are. Not because you've assessed the situation, but because their emotional weather has colonized your internal atmosphere. So the sequence for emotional intensity is you lose your anchor, your energetic boundary weakens, and you get pushed to the periphery of your energetic space, making room for their emotional intensity to fill it. Think of this as an energetic push. The second type of energetic intensity is certainty. This one's more subtle. It's not loud or forceful. You don't feel it like the onslaught of the emotional intensity. This is the energy of the person who speaks with complete conviction, who inhabits their worldview so thoroughly that it creates a kind of gravitational pull. You're in a conversation with them about something you actually know quite a bit about, but the way they present their perspective, so clear, so unambiguous, so structurally solid, starts to make your own position feel fuzzy by comparison. You find yourself leaning toward their framework, not because they've convinced you with superior arguments, but because the architecture of their certainty is stronger than the architecture of your own knowing. They're not even trying to persuade you. Their signal is just so clear, their internal alignment so coherent, that your system unconsciously reads it as more authoritative than your own sense of things. Think about the person who always knows exactly what restaurant to go to, what decision to make, what the right path forward is. When you're around them, your own preferences, your own point of view start to feel optional, negotiable. You reflexively defer without ever having decided to defer. Another example of this kind of energetic capture can be seen in your response to highly charismatic people. There are really bad people who are charismatic and good people who have this kind of energy. Being around good people who are charismatic can be quite enjoyable. So it's not the charisma that's the problem. But if you can't hold your own reality around this kind of high intensity signal, you will experience a kind of energetic capture. It's not about the intentions of the other person. It's down to whether you can maintain the integrity of your energy field around them. So while emotional intensity results in a flooding of your energy field, kind of like it's being colonized by someone else's intense feelings, this kind of energetic compromise is more like being caught in someone else's gravity. The sequence for this kind of energetic collapse is this. You have an energetic anchor, and when you get triggered by someone else's powerful gravity, you release that anchor and allow your energy field to be captured by their gravity. You can think of this as an energetic pull. The third type of intensity is straight up domination. You know what I'm talking about here. This is the narcissist, the controller, the person who moves through the world with an agenda that has no space for your reality in it. They're not just confident, they're compressing. You can feel it physically. When they focus their attention on you, there's a pressure that tries to make you smaller. Their desired outcome has such force behind it that your own wants, your own boundaries, your own sense of what's real, all of it gets flattened under the weight of their intention. Maybe it's the boss who subtly punishes any resistance to their vision. Maybe it's the family member who manipulates through guilt and manufactured urgency. Or maybe it's the romantic partner who reframes every disagreement until you're the one apologizing, even when you know what they did was wrong. These people aren't just influential, they're domineering and energetically corrosive. And if you haven't firmly rooted yourself in your own authority, their pressure doesn't just push you off center, it compresses you, makes you feel diminished, crushed, distorted, and used. And it's not just people you know, people close to you who can trigger you. Maybe you finally said enough and decided to remove all the domineering, controlling people from your life. That is a total boss move, but you're gonna run into people like this out in the wild. There's really no way to avoid it entirely. Emotional intensity pushes you off center. Certainty and another person's strong gravity pulls you into that person's orbit. Domination triggers you into releasing your anchor and then compresses you into something smaller than you are. These are three different mechanisms with the same result. You release your anchor and then lose your position of internal authority. So what's really going on here? Why does this keep happening? Often with the same people in the same kinds of situations. I mean, you're not just walking around in a state of collapse with everyone. It's very specific, but why? The intensity of the other person is triggering you into a child state. And I don't mean you're acting childish. I mean your nervous system quite literally switches to running programming from when you were 3 or 6 or 8 years old. When you were a child, your survival depended on your ability to read and accommodate the emotional states of the adults around you. A parent's anger wasn't just unpleasant, it was potentially destabilizing to your entire world. Their certainty wasn't just convincing, it was reality itself. You had no choice but to organize your nervous system around the strongest signals in your environment, because those signals determined your safety, your belonging, your survival. So your system developed a rule, a fast, automatic rule that didn't require conscious thought. This is it. When faced with intense external signal, abandon your own reality and let the stronger signal take precedence. And this made perfect sense when you were 6. It kept you safe, it maintained attachment, it prevented escalation when you had no power to protect yourself. But here's what your nervous system doesn't know. You're not 6 anymore. From a neurological perspective, what's happening is that certain cues, emotional intensity, absolute certainty, domineering pressure, are triggering your amygdala to fire the same threat response it fired when you were young. Your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for executive function and rational assessment, it goes partially offline. And that's that feeling of watching it happen from a slight distance, but not being able to take action. The more primitive parts of your nervous system have taken over, and when they're activated, you're going to prioritize survival over evolution. This is called neuroception. And it's when your nervous system scans for safety or danger below the level of conscious awareness. And when it detects certain patterns like raised voices, authoritative tones, emotional flooding, it doesn't check whether you're actually in danger now. It just knows those patterns meant danger then. And it activates the same survival response. Make yourself smaller, defer to the stronger signal, prioritize someone else's emotional stability over your own energetic integrity. And this is why awareness isn't enough. You can see yourself doing it, watch from a slight distance as you accommodate, defer, collapse, and still feel utterly unable to stop it. Once the reflex is triggered, once that archaic programming takes over your nervous system, your adult self is pushed off to the passenger seat, or in some cases, it might feel more like the trunk. You're not in control anymore, and you've reverted to the strategies of the child who had to survive by yielding. So that's what it looks like from your body's perspective. Your brain and your nervous system get activated, and it's tied to your childhood. I mean, isn't it always? Now let's look at what's happening energetically. In each of these 3 types of energy collapse I described earlier, there is a slightly different mechanism. One pushes, one pulls, and one compresses. But it all starts in the same way. You get triggered, and the first thing you do is release your anchor. This is important because you may assume this is purely about having a stronger boundary. You might think the other person's intense energy is coming at you like a missile bombardment and is trying to breach your boundary. But that's not what's happening. They don't need to breach your boundary. You do that job yourself. It's an inside job. You get triggered by their intense energy, switch into a child state, and you reflexively release your anchor. This is what causes your boundary to collapse, not any kind of action from outside. Your boundary doesn't get beat up, sputter out, and collapse. So it's not about defending yourself from the other person's energy. And if you put your attention and effort there, you're going to have a real uphill battle with minimal effect. The thing you must learn to do is remain firmly anchored into your own reality, your own authority, your own energetic field. From this unmovable energetic stance, you can then focus on enhancing your boundary game, which can feel a bit athletic, but it's not any kind of struggle. And you may notice that you don't get triggered equally by all 3 kinds of intensity. You might be more susceptible to emotional colonization and not affected much by charismatic energy. It's helpful to do an audit of the push, pull, and compress energy patterns to see which ones affect you the most. Now, aside from being really frustrated and maybe even disappointed in yourself after a trigger session, there are longer-term consequences of continuing to play out these patterns. When your system keeps running these legacy childhood programs, the costs accumulate in ways that are easy to miss at first. The most obvious cost is in your relationships and interactions. Instead of holding your own reality, you find yourself stepping around potential friction. Conversations become more careful. You're editing yourself in real time because holding your own position in the presence of someone else's intensity, it feels exhausting, disproportionate to the situation. Decisions get shaped by what will create the smoothest emotional surface rather than the truest outcome. You agree to plans you don't actually want. You take on roles that don't serve you, and you let conversations end in places that don't reflect your actual perspective. Again, because the effort required to hold your own frame feels impossibly large when you're in that collapsed state, in that child state. You have ideas, you have insights and directions you want to move in, changes you want to make in your life or relationships. But when you encounter someone else's strong signal, your own impulses feel less real, easier to abandon. And again, it's because you're in that child state. A child can't muster the clarity, resolve, and energy to overcome adult intensity. Giving them a motivational speech isn't going to do anything. They don't have the resources. And then there's how others perceive you. Some people read you as flexible, agreeable, easygoing, and these sound like compliments, but they're often masking the fact that your internal position is intermittently being displaced. Others assume you're accommodating by choice, that you're unbothered by things that actually do bother you, and that you're open-minded when really you just lost your anchor to your own center. And the people who truly are predatory, manipulative, controlling, they see you clearly. They recognize the signature of someone whose boundaries collapse under pressure. You become a low-effort target. They don't have to work hard to override your reality because your system is already primed to defer to stronger signals. And over time, you develop a kind of dislocation from yourself around specific people. The ones where you can feel yourself becoming someone different, someone smaller, someone less solid. And you walk away from interactions with them feeling vaguely destabilized, like you can't quite remember what you actually think or want. You feel drained, hungover even, and sometimes you feel really bad about yourself. You realize it's happened again. Why couldn't you hold your own ground, your own fidelity? It's confusing and frustrating, and you feel like you let yourself down. You aren't sure if you can really count on yourself. This is the long-term cost, a gradual disconnection from your own authority, your own reality frame. You start to lose trust in your own perceptions, your own knowing, because you keep getting triggered into a state where someone else's signal outranks your own. The reason this pattern doesn't just resolve on its own, even after you become aware of it, is that your system still believes the reflex is correct. At some earlier point in your life, accommodating emotional force and certainty was adaptive. The strategy was encoded as a survival rule, filed away in the automatic response library of your nervous system. The rule is elegantly simple. Stabilize the stronger external signal first, return to yourself later. Your internal reality becomes conditional. You can hold your center until you can't. Understanding this as a mechanical, structural issue rather than a personal failing removes the layer of shame that usually attaches to it. You're not weak. You're not a pushover. You're running outdated survival software in situations where it no longer applies. You haven't taught yourself to hold your anchor firm, regardless of what's happening around you or within you. Because remember, it's not the intense external energy that does anything, not really. It triggers your internal survival program. And that's what causes you to release your anchor. So really, you need to learn to hold your anchor regardless of what's going on inside you. And this is energetic mastery. The ability to hold your energetic authority will require two approaches. You need to root out the old programming and deal with it. And while you're doing that, you need to learn how to remain anchored into your energy field, firmly rooted into your reality frame. When you learn how your energy field works and how to work with it, you can begin with a fundamental reinterpretation of what external signals actually mean. One of the skills, the very important skills you'll learn, is how to tell what's yours and what's not yours, emotionally, energetically, mentally, and so on. By getting to know what is not yours and learning how to clear it out of your field, you're left with a clearer signal, your signal. You start becoming familiar with what your own signal is. And this is also true for programming. As you become more skilled at working with your energy field, you become familiar with what programming feels like, how to recognize your default programming and clear it. When you're able to clearly distinguish your signal, when you make a habit of maintaining your energy field as a clear and nourishing sanctuary for yourself, you can more easily recognize someone else's emotional intensity as information about their internal state, and it's not a directive for yours. Their urgency belongs to them, unless you consciously choose to take it on. Their anxiety is describing their nervous system, not prescribing how yours should respond. And when someone attempts to dominate, to compress you with the force of their agenda, that's information about their need for control, their inability to coexist with your autonomous reality. And it says nothing about whether your reality should yield. These aren't affirmations to repeat to yourself. They require more than awareness. They call for structural recalibrations. And once you make them, your boundary will automatically convert intense external energy into information. Do you get the difference? Right now, your system reads it as intense energy and it reacts. But when you learn to master your inner domain, your energy field, your system converts it before it reaches you fully. And when it does, it arrives to you in the form of information, not intense energy. See, you react to energy, but you appraise information. Energy and information access different processing pathways. You're teaching your system a new hierarchy. You are the authority in your own energetic field. Always. No external signal, no matter how intense, how certain, how domineering, outranks your position at the center of your own experience. You're not a kid anymore. And you're also not just along for the ride. You're taking charge of your vehicle. And when your nervous system learns to obey this hierarchy, the collapse loses its logic. You can remain steady even when external intensity is present. You can register someone's panic without absorbing it into your own nervous system. You can recognize clarity in someone else's worldview without abandoning your own. You can encounter controlling, manipulative people and remain unmoved because their pressure no longer finds the compliance protocol it's searching for. This isn't about becoming rigid or defended. It's not resistance or detachment. It's not a struggle for control. It's coherence. It's taking full responsibility for your energetic reality, and it's what true adulthood actually looks like. Because what's been happening is this: you've been toggling back into the template of a young child around certain people who transmit intense signals. You've been operating from a developmental stage where you had no choice but to defer, where survival meant collapsing around stronger forces. But you're not that child anymore. You have the capacity to hold your own reality frame, even when someone else is expressing theirs with force or gravity. Every time your energy field collapses around someone else's intensity, you're not just losing that moment. You're training your system that this is who you are. You're casting a vote for a version of yourself that lives in the margins, that negotiates for space in your own life, that treats your own knowing as optional, and that gets captured into the orbit of those with high charisma. The people around you learn it too. They learn that your boundaries are suggestions. They learn that your reality is flexible. They learn unconsciously that you are someone whose center can be displaced, and they organize their relationship with you accordingly. And this is what's actually at stake, not just holding your ground in an argument, but the fundamental question of whether you will occupy the center of your own existence or allow yourself to be overruled by other people's stronger signals. And the pattern will keep running until you interrupt it at the level where it lives, in your nervous system, in your default childhood programming, in your ability to work with your energetic field and hold your anchor. And when you do reclaim your position of internal authority and teach your body and energy field that no external force outranks your own center, you'll see a natural cascade of positive shifts in your life. The people who relied on your collapse will feel it immediately. Some will adjust and some won't. But you'll finally be able to see clearly who can coexist with your autonomous reality and who requires your diminishment to feel comfortable. What emerges isn't just steadiness, it's a different quality of presence entirely. The internal world of others becomes readable, it's information, without becoming energetically influential. You can be with someone's emotional intensity without it colonizing your experience. You can appreciate someone's certainty or charisma without it destabilizing your own reality. And you can remain undiminished by domineering control tactics. This is energetic authority, the ability to remain yourself in the presence of any signal, any intensity, any pressure. And the question is not whether you're capable of this, you are. The question is whether you'll continue volunteering your center to whoever transmits the strongest signal, or whether you'll finally plant yourself at the axis of your own reality and refuse to move. This is the real work, and if you're ready for it, come find me at amarastrand.com. It's been a pleasure to share this time with you, and I'll talk to you again soon.